I mean, it's a unique little fashion choice, and you were talking about the fact that they were being brainwashed. My mistake. I thought you were talking about whatever the holy hell that is. We opened this week with a bit of an unnecessarily long recap. Yeah, I'm starting to realize that a serious pet peeve of mine are recaps that use full clips from the previous episode with no new real context. It just becomes a pretty blatant example of padding. Anyway, once we did get some new stuff, we continued with the brainwashed Hanto fighting against his friends, and after a dizzying, yet still pretty cool exchange with Lakia, Shoma managed to stop the Chocolate Rider with his overform. Call me crazy, but I think it would be a little hard to pick up something with a closed fist. Meanwhile, Naivo talked with his zombie servant, and we got little hints that this incredibly amoral scientist did still kind of miss the real Suga. Not enough to not defile his corpse, but at least he cared a little. Kind of likewise, the writers cared enough about Hanto that they tried to turn him back to normal. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's a normal reaction from him. Yeah, funny thing is that even though Hanto wouldn't normally attack Shoma and Lakia, this sort of forced aggression out of him is actually nothing new for him, which really kind of highlights how much of a hothead this dude is. In the end, Lakia, who looked like he had suddenly developed a prego belly, reverted back to his grand nude form for the first time in a long time in order to use his toxin as an I also like the little touch in which he admitted that he didn't want to have to use this ability again because, yeah, it is morally questionable to say the least. Later, they informed Sachika of what was going on and asked for her help as well.
Sachika-sanも引き続き SNS で黒ずくめの男の情報を探してみてくれるかな?
I tried, but I just keep getting these results about some dude to turn some teen detective into a shota. Meanwhile, Zombie Suka was already making his next move by mesmerizing several more citizens, including a mother whose kid is probably gonna be traumatized for the rest of her life, as well as Masaru. Play a children's card game on motorcycles. Meanwhile, Sachika was forced to go away from her computer after one of their clients asked her to escort her daughter to her karate class after, well, everything that's happened in this godforsaken city. Yeah, this probably wasn't the most disastrous city in all of Kamen Rider, at least in terms of property damage and kill counts, but still, it's up there. Anyway, while out and about, Sachika noticed the brainwashed people, as well as someone who seemed to be Suga.
何のつもりだ?
Yeah, I actually found this to be one of the funniest bits in the whole episode. I mean, for one thing, like Sachika, I really did think it was Suga, and certainly wasn't expecting the return of Longo, even though we know he's out there. And two, Sachika didn't even realize that she had made an incredibly important discovery, as she hadn't even been formally introduced to Longo. And lastly, Longo's reaction was just the best. It was like, get away from me, you stupid bitch. I'm not into boomer gals. But yeah, he correctly deduced that Boka was behind most of this. Meanwhile, Hanto was still tied up and dealing with his brainwashing in the form of basically the classic angel and devil routine. And I think this is kind of supposed to be dramatic, and it did nicely recap the journey that Hanto has taken over the course of the series, but between, again, the angel and devil routine, I really couldn't take this bit all that seriously. Actually, you know what this scene is missing? Some saw. Game over. Back with the other riders, they caught up with the brainwashed people who almost reached their final destination in the waters of the coast. Yeah, Suga's latter order was likely something like drown yourself.
You know, for kids!
The two tried to stop them, but obviously it was way too much for them to handle, and even the MVP Sachika wouldn't be of much help. Thus, Lakia had no choice but to use his toxin again to sedate everyone, which, yeah, he ended up doing it in front of Sachika. Like, she probably knows that he was doing the right thing, but still, it must be kind of awkward to see her boy toy in his true form. Sachika, why did you sneak another peek? Is it because he is technically naked right now as a giant jellyfish? Anyway, Nival then just showed up to brag that his experiment was a success because this dude is just that kind of a putz. I mean, granted, he also did seem like he was there for a fight, as not only did he bring Suga with him, but he also finally decided to roll up his own sleeves. Damn, this nerd is swole. Yet, in spite of those perks, dude was actually a bit more of a long-range attacker. I guess it kind of makes sense, as on top of his suit actor, Yuji Nakata, having played the original incarnation of Gavv for the show, he also played the gun-wielding Kamen Rider Geats. So yeah, between him and Vrom, we've actually got an indirect crossover between the main writers of the previous 2 seasons. Anyway, Hanto soon arrived and seemed like he was about to attack his teammates.
What a surprise!
I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a nice moment for the dude, as he had overcome the brainwashing on his own, but again, it wasn't that much of a dramatic scene, so it's not as though it would have been that much of a surprise either way. Still, if anything, he at least managed to knock Nival on his ass, and that was worth more than anything really. The two had a brief, yet kind of funny little exchange, like this bit of Hanto being chased down by a bow and arrow. Sidestep it, you stupid idiot. Unfortunately, things were looking a little better for Shoma and Lakia.
And that's the way the cookie crumbles.
And in the end, we got a nice subtle bit where seemingly the last bits of Suga's humanity leaked through, with him trying to protect the gun that connected him to Nival before both him and it were destroyed by the riders. And with the gun destroyed, everyone snapped out of their brainwashing and stumbled upon the battle in progress. And as usual, they saw every participant as a monster, which yeah, makes sense for Nival, but come on, y'all are just being stupid when it comes to these pastel colored riders. Fortunately, Sachika pulled a Hanto and managed to cheerlead for all of them, including Hanto himself now. Nival took his leave, though not before taking note of how much stronger the Gochujos his little brother produced were. Meanwhile, Masaru felt like he had heard the term Kamen Rider before somewhere.
仮面ライダー有名なのか
Between this and Precure, these superheroes really need to get their names more out there. Oh wait, that's actually kind of what the new series is gonna do. But yeah, as a result, he also ended up stumbling upon their articles about the Grand Newts appearing 20 years prior, which just so happened to coincide with his little sister's disappearance. On that note, after he ended up getting involved, Hanto kind of rightfully figured that he should open Pandora's box. Thus, the episode ended with Shoma learning about his second, not great, but still really good uncle. This was a fine enough conclusion to the start of this final arc for the series. It was mostly just here to set up plot points for the rest of the series going forward, and it accomplished that nicely enough. So with that, I actually can't complain too much, and there were some fun bits here and there. When you get down to it, this episode had to do a lot in its allotted time between resolving the stuff with Zombie Suga, properly debuting Nival's Grand Newt form, and the return of Lakia's. There was just a lot going on, and yet, thankfully, none of it felt too rushed. Though by the same token, it didn't feel like anything special by this point. I think it's because we are near the end and everyone's character arcs are all but done, and as a result, Hanto, while overcoming his brainwashing was admirable, it was also kind of predictable. However, the sequence of him fighting it out with Shoulder Angel and Devil was fun, as was Sachika's second encounter with Longo. That, plus her actually seeing Lakia's true form for the first time, could lead to some interesting developments later. I would say of all the main characters, she does need something in this final arc to really help conclude her story. That said, I'm not too concerned about this stuff, as we still got a lot of time to cover this, plus Shoma being his uncle, which is all looking promising. So overall, this is a fine enough episode, if a little pedestrian at points, but hey, at least stuff is progressing nicely. We'll see how things fall out from here, which, knowing Kamen Rider finales, things will probably fall very hard. Thanks for watching, and if you want to prevent yourself from drawing in that beach over there, I think our videos can help with that. This season, we're also doing some shorts to recommend whatever I find interesting at the time, like one of the better Yuri anime I saw yesterday. Look forward to whatever comes next. Until then though, for now my friends, and did a certain jellyfish strike this beach or something? Oh, no, they're all just sleeping. with a few bottles here and there.